Hello there, my name's Saffron Asteria. I'm a writer, the owner of the website Idiosyncrasy, and the host of the podcast Booked. Before I get down to business, I'd like to tell you about what I do. So, Idiosyncrasy, no, I'm not mispronouncing a word, is a portmanteau, and it combines the word indie and the word idiosyncrasy. So, the aim of this website is to highlight indie authors. So, these are self published authors, those who have published with indie presses. It's just a way for me to give back to the community. It's also a hub for writers to be able to find resources such as book reviewers or looking for podcasts to be featured on, including my own. It's also a way for writers to find resources that will help them with their writing journey. The goal is to sort of empower people, and that's what I'm hoping to do for you today. So Booked is the sister podcast for Idiosyncrasy. So that's where I interview featured authors and get to know them a bit better. The reason behind this is because I found that by getting to know these people as individuals, it makes the reading experience a lot more rich. And that's going to be interwoven in some of the advice and suggestions that I have for you today. So both of my endeavors are designed essentially to help readers find new writers to love and for writers to find community. If you're listening to this and you're curious, I would love it if you would check it out, the podcast, the website, because you just might find your new favorite writer. So I'd like to go over some of the things that I'm going to be covering today. This is for experienced writers, for new writers. This hopefully will equip you with some perhaps out of the box thinking. If you're a reader and you're watching this, there's lots of ways that you can help these incredible artists. So stay tuned because there's a bit for you as well. So the main things that I'll be covering today are understanding who your readers are and where to find them, connecting with readers, and why it's important to figure out what success looks like to you. So let's get to it. The first thing that you're going to need to do, if you haven't already, is figure out who your readers are. Why is this important, I hear you ask? You might not have asked, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So it's important to find out who your readers are because they are located in totally different places. So you might find that you have tried it all, but if you're trying to spread yourself really thin and trying to contact every type of reader rather than the readers that are your target audience, you're going to find yourself running out of steam or potentially wasting your time when you could be connecting with the people that really would be interested in your work. So something that's really important to think about is who are my readers and where are they? So there are a couple of ways that you can do this. So the first one is the main one, and I'm sure you've already thought about this, is what genre does your book fit into? Now, with the indie world, for example, you might not be able to put yourself into specific categories, but you can certainly find elements that will be appealing to people. So really have a look at the message in your book, if there is one. Are there some characteristics that people might find interesting, such as having a strong female lead? Or if it's a bit more spooky, then you'll know what types of readers over time that you'll be wanting to connect with. Another way that authors can navigate this is to find some tropes. Some people call them tropes. They're just elements within that book, within that story that people might find interesting. For example, if you're writing romance, there might be an enemies to lovers dynamic, or there might be dragons or something like that. So by doing exercises like this, you will be able to narrow down where your readers are and where you need to be placing your book in front of them. So it might be that your readers are predominantly on a specific platform, or there might be some genre-specific locations such as stores or websites that might be beneficial for you to have your book on as well. Your readers could be in a number of places. They could be in book clubs or at the library. They could be on social media platforms, and each of those kind of has a little subset of different types of readers. It's worth taking the time to traverse these places and find out what the readership looks like, what the successful books are within those areas. So if it's a specific bookstore, if they are for romance books or romance readers. I know I'm focusing on romance a little bit, but it's stuck in my head now. If they are specific for a genre, then you might be better off putting your efforts into something like that. So by looking into these different locations, you'll hopefully be able to see some patterns in terms of the readership, or even the pricing that you set your book at might make a huge difference as well. So have a look at each of these different elements, and that should help you to see where to put your efforts. If you cast your net too widely, you might find yourself burning out or wasting time when you could be writing the next book. It is so easy to get caught up in trying to tell everybody that will listen about your book, and sometimes that doesn't work. So for some writers, having a huge amount of exposure is really, really helpful because people become familiar with your work, especially if it's in the way that, reviewers are talking about them or people are recommending it. But if it's just you on your own, telling people about your book over and over again, sometimes it becomes white noise and isn't necessarily helpful for you and finding your readers. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about any kind of social media strategy or marketing strategy that you are putting together. Try and mix it up a little bit. I know that the majority of writers do not do this full time. So your time is really, really precious. And if your focus is to look for readers, I would concentrate on places that are going to have the most impact rather than trying to put all of your effort into like 10 different things. Try and pick one or two things that you think are actually going to make a difference for you in your readership. And then you can grow from there. So once you've identified the places that your readers are lurking, you can then work on connecting with those readers. So you can do that in a number of ways. One of the main ways that I see writers successfully connecting with readers is through social media. But we're going to come back to that in a minute because there are some other ways that you can connect with people other than going on social media. Now, I may be a little biased, but one of the best ways that you can connect with people are through podcasts, especially live ones where you can interact with the audience. One of the main things that I've noticed through my experience with my show Booked is I did do pre-recorded episodes, and at the time the thing was really small. It's still kind of small, but it's growing. And once I switched to a live format, I saw a noticeable difference in audience members saying that they've just bought that person's book or that they're excited to read their book, and you get some instant feedback and it gives them a chance to ask you questions about your work, which is super helpful, especially if you perhaps aren't as well known or you're still trying to find your feet in the sort of writer-reader space. So find yourself a host or a podcast that is relevant to your book. So don't forget that. If the particular podcast covers all types of books like Booked, I don't have a requirement for specific genres. I just want to get to know the writers, and hopefully the audience will get to know that writer with me. There are particular podcasts that are helpful for horror writers, or there might be ones that specifically concentrate on sci-fi and fantasy, romantasy, every genre under the sun. There's going to be a podcast because everyone has a podcast. If you can find one that has a very good listenership, then that would be beneficial. But don't be afraid to reach out to the smaller creators because they want to help you as much as you want to help them. You don't have to do live shows, but I've found that they're really, really helpful because it gives you that opportunity to connect with those listeners. So a few more of these suggestions are going to sound really scary to introverts. It may not come across like this, but I am an introvert. Doing extroverted activities is incredibly exhausting, but if you're doing it because you want your book to be successful, then have that be the driving force behind you doing that scary thing. Another way that you could connect with readers or future readers is to contact local bookstores. I suggest going indie because that's my whole thing, but you might want to go to a chain bookstore, whatever you can get hold of in your community. They love local authors. So try and do something within your area because that's a fantastic selling point for those particular bookstores. They all work a bit differently. So each bookstore will have a different setup. So it might be that you can get your books into there and on their shelves on a consignment where you put them in there at your own cost and then they sell them on your behalf and you then get a profit from that. Some of them will buy books from you, especially if you're a local author, because that is an appealing selling point. You might be able to get a signing. There are many bookstores that will allow you to do a free signing of your books. This helps them, it helps you, it helps the economy. I know that probably sounds kind of scary, but sometimes it's worth doing things that scare you. This is scaring me, but I'm hoping that it's going to benefit somebody. So yeah, you might get the chance to meet readers and you might get the chance to connect with people. You might even make some friends. So it's worth trying. So as well as bookstores, you could approach your local library. It's super important that you connect with your local library. So there are a couple of different ways, and readers this is for you as well. There are a couple of different ways that you could get your books into libraries, and there's a chance that you could even do a reading, especially if you write children's books. So reach out to libraries. Libraries are incredibly important, and anything that we can do to support them and let them support us, we should absolutely do as writers. There are tons of ways that you can get involved. Some libraries have book clubs, so you could even suggest that your book is considered to be read as part of the book club, or just join the book club itself. And sometimes there are writers' groups. Don't be afraid to connect with other writers as well, because they read books too. While I'm on the subject of in-person events, one of the top recommendations that I have for success in terms of book sales and connecting with readers are that a lot of authors find that going to conventions and book expos, or whatever the event may be, where you essentially have a stand or a stall and you can sell your books and connect with the readers. I've heard a lot of people that have tremendous success with doing things like this. I know authors that go to regular book events or they go to conventions and they absolutely love it. If you're somebody that has the funds or the ability to create merchandise, that's a fantastic tool for marketing, especially if you have cool artwork or other things that you can do some branding with. I would definitely recommend giving that a consideration. I know it can be very expensive, and talking to people is stressful sometimes. But those people are there and they're a captive audience, and they're there because of the love of the thing. So whatever the thing is. So if you decide to go to a fantasy expo or something similar and you have a fantasy book, chances are you're going to find at least somebody, at least one person that might be interested in reading your story, because they are there because they want to be there. You're not on social media where you're trying to fight for attention and there's like a sea of people that aren't even necessarily interested in reading books. The majority of readers probably don't go to social media to find their next read. They'll go to places of interest, bookstores, and various places like that. It's not going to be the first thing on their mind. So I'll talk about social media again in a minute. Don't rely on that being your only marketing strategy. There are plenty of other places other than social media that you can get your books out there. Plenty of other places where you can connect to readers. So don't forget, you've got podcasts, many, 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 many of them out there. There are libraries, there are independent and chain bookstores, there are conventions, and something I haven't mentioned because I haven't got a ton of experience in it, but you could also connect with your local radio station, because there are some stations that will have sections or shows that are based around literature or art. So don't be afraid to think outside the box. Your book is worth it. Your story is worth it. Sometimes you have to go outside of the norm to find your audience, and that's okay. So one last thing that I want to mention before I go on to the subject of social media and navigating that space is, don't forget that newsletters are an incredibly powerful tool. I think they're totally underrated, and you basically have a built-in captive audience if you can build readership through a newsletter. You could use something like Substack, although I know a lot of people don't like the blog format. If you have a website, there are many add-ons that are free, and there are lots of other free newsletter platforms that you can use to build your readership. A couple of pieces of advice with newsletters. Again, I'm not an expert, but these are just things that I've noticed through talking to the many, many, many writers that I've had the pleasure of having conversations with. So the first thing is, make sure that your newsletter or the message that you're trying to get across is relevant and you're not spamming people's inboxes. We all can think, I'm sure, of companies who send constant newsletters or emails with promotions and things like that. And I don't know about you, but I always ignore them and they eventually go in my spam folder. So just be considerate of your readers and make sure that they are regular, but that they are relevant. Another thing to consider is how much information you put in that newsletter. So with my own newsletter, I used to put tons of information in them. And I found that really people were just eventually dropping off because there were too many points to make. So try not to give it like War and Peace. Make sure that it's a bit punchy. You can include images in there. If you have a sale or something like that, those are things that people want to learn about. If you have more to say, if you are giving people background information, give them an excerpt and perhaps consider using a blog. But over time, you could build readership, especially if you go to places like conventions. You can get people to sign up for your newsletter. Additionally, you can include, if you are self-published or there are certain publishers that will allow this, you can include signups to your newsletter as QR codes or links in ebooks, for example. Okay. It's time to talk about social media. It's one of those things that is a tool in our arsenal as writers. It's a necessary evil, and it's a place where I've made a ton of friends and made a lot of connections. And I don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for social media. I'd be alive, but I wouldn't be talking to you. So, as I said earlier, your readers aren't all going to be on every single platform. You might find that your target audience largely belongs on somewhere like Instagram or Threads. You might find that your target audience is on Twitter. And again, you're not really going to know until you explore those things. What I would recommend, however, is don't sign up to every single social media outlet that you can find. The reason behind that is it's too much work for you to make anything of it or to actually connect with people. It's called social media for a reason. It encourages us to have conversations with people and to get people's attention and increase engagement with our posts. If we don't have that engagement, there are a lot of algorithms on particular social media websites that will make sure that people do not see your posts. If you have your finger in all of the social media pies, you're not going to have any time to write. You're not going to have any time to connect with your readers. And eventually you'll probably burn out, because most people do. Some things that you can use to combat this are, I'm not paid by Buffer, but I would recommend using something like Buffer, which can be a free scheduling system for social media. So you can connect your accounts and you can write one post that will go out to all of your social media accounts. It's incredibly helpful, especially if you don't want to be knee deep and in actual social media, but you want to get your post out there. That's a tool that you can use if you want to save some time and some energy. But all in all, if you're going to use social media as your main marketing strategy, you're going to have to engage with people. You can't always, some people might get away with it. And if you're one of those people, I'm very happy for you, but you can't always just post things and then expect people to buy your books. You're going to have to connect with people, talk to them, engage them in conversation. And one other thing that I would suggest to do is to vary your content. So if you're constantly just posting links to your work, people are not really going to be that interested in it. So switch it up a little bit. Try a meme, for example. That works for some authors. If you're on Instagram, you could try making a reel. If you get the free version of Canva, you can create reels and videos very quickly that can allow you to mix up your content and engage people a little bit more. You don't have to be in book promotion mode all the time, and it's okay to be genuine. There's something for me as a reader anyway that really connects with the human behind the art. And if you show a little bit of your human side, that can be incredibly helpful in terms of engaging with people, especially your readers. This is not me telling you the do's and don'ts. I'm just observing and I'm just feeding back what I've observed. But there are some writers who will use social media to share their sales, and that's fantastic. It can be really encouraging, but it doesn't work for everybody. So if you use that tool to beg people for sales, for example, or as a way of making people feel sorry for you, it might hurt your brand. I hate to use that word, but branding is really important these days. It might hurt your brand, and it's not necessarily conducive for generating sales. There are very few people that I've noticed that are able to use that tactic and have regular sales. So if making sales and earning money is a goal for you, I wouldn't recommend tactics like that. So in conclusion about social media, look to see where your readers are and concentrate your time on those specific social media platforms. Have some variety in your posts. So create reels if you're on Instagram, use memes if you want to or if they're relevant, ask people questions, get your audience involved with your process. Something to bear in mind when it comes to getting your books in front of people: there are millions of authors registered with Amazon. So your book has to fight for a place at the table. And if it doesn't have a punchy cover, or if you're not as well known, if your marketing strategy maybe isn't quite working yet, you're going to potentially find it difficult to find your readers and to generate page reads or book sales or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So because of that, you may find it difficult to get your book in front of readers. So please remember that, and don't be disheartened if you are not getting the book sales that you are hoping for. Sometimes you just have to try a few different things before you find your groove. You will get there eventually. You just have to try a few different things sometimes. So something that I ask all of the authors that I interview, and it's a question that I end every show with, is what does success look like to you? So this is one of the key elements of identifying where to put your books, where your readers might be, and where to put your efforts. Because again, as I've said a few times already, your time and your efforts are limited and they're precious. So make sure that you're spending your time on the right things so that you can achieve the goals that you have set out for yourself. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a mood board or a spreadsheet or set yourself goals for the fiscal year or whatever you have to do. You can if you want to, whatever floats your boat. But try and identify those things. Try and identify where you want your book to be in 5-10 years time. If it's just to find a reader that enjoys your work, you'll be able to find one very easily. If it's to achieve a monetary goal or a goal in terms of like the amount of readers that you have, you might have to think about your strategy more seriously. If it's just the fact that you've written a book and you've got it out there, if you have done that already, congratulations, you've achieved success. For some people, the act of just completing the story and having it out of their head is the most important thing to them, and everything else is gravy. Just do yourself a favor and try not to compare yourself too much to other writers. It can be incredibly hard, especially if we are lurking on the internet a lot. But you and your goals and your achievements and your abilities and your skill set are going to be totally unique and different compared to the next writer. So just worry about yourself and worry about your work and worry about your readers. So we've reached the end of this video. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me today. Thank you for taking your time out of the writing time that you may have. Maybe you've watched this at work or on your lunch break, but you still spent your time with me, and I really appreciate it. So I guess the message that I'm hoping to get across today is that there is no one way of doing this successfully. There is no one way of finding readers, but the important things that you need to remember are: discover who you are as a writer and what your books are and what they would mean to your readers. Discover what's important to you, and you will be able to set your goals to get to that point. I believe in you, and you should believe in you as well. It's important that we protect ourselves, and it's important that we love what we do. If you listen to this and you thought, I don't really want to do any of those things, you don't have to do anything. But I'm hoping that you have found some ideas and maybe some inspiration so that you can think of something new to do, or maybe put some effort back into something that you had once abandoned. So if you're interested in any of my endeavors, such as Idiosyncrasy or Booked, feel free to comment on this video and I will do my best to respond as soon as possible. If you would like to subscribe to the YouTube channel for Booked and get to know your new favorite writers, it's at BookedPod, all one word, on YouTube, and there are various other places like Spotify and Castbox, and iHeart, Apple and Amazon, where you can find the podcast as well if you don't like to use YouTube. You can head to the website www.indiosyncrasy.com and check out some blog posts, or maybe again even get to know your new favorite writer. So I've been Saffron Asteria, and thank you so much for watching today. Goodbye.